Good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk to y'all real quick about Lori Vallow Daybell. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's get into it. And this here is day one. And shout out to Hidden True Crime for this. I might try again to day two. I don't know. But let's get into day one first, shall we?
You can record phone calls, give you real-time translation, and give you even deep noise cancellation.
Hello, Hidden Gems. Today marks the beginning of what may be Lori Vallow Daybell's final trial, her third time facing a jury, and this time the charge is conspiracy to commit murder. Again, this time the target wasn't her children or her husband, but her former nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux. Prosecutors say that back in October 2019, Lori and her now deceased brother, Alex Cox, plotted to kill Brandon. Alex allegedly drove a Jeep registered to Lori's late husband, Charles Vallow, from Rexburg, Idaho, all the way to Gilbert, Arizona, and opened fire on Brandon outside his home. Miraculously, Brandon survived. At the time, Brandon had
Thank
recently
God.
separated from his wife, Melanie Boudreaux, Lori's niece, who now goes by Melanie Pulowski. And according to the state, Lori, Chad, Daybell, and Alex had branded Brandon with one of their infamous labels, dark, a spiritual death sentence in their world. And prosecutors believe a green light for murder. Brandon is the only
Mm-mm.
known target of this trio to survive. Just
Crazy,
last
crazy
month,
people.
Lori was convicted of conspiracy to murder Charles Vallow, who was shot and killed by Alex. That was her then husband. And before that, she and Chad were both convicted of murdering her children, Tylee and JJ, and Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell. And now it's Brandon's turn to seek justice. Of course, Lori tried to delay things. She filed motion after motion, claimed
As
illness, possibly
usual.
real, possibly not, probably not. She even tried to get Judge Boreski thrown off the case, accused him of bias. It didn't work. None of it did. So here we are. Lori is once again representing herself, a risky move, especially considering how that went last time. But maybe she thinks she's gained courtroom skills after so many trials. We will see. So let's get into it. Here's everything that happened on day one of the Brandon Boudreaux attempted murder trial. Before opening statements even began, Brandon Boudreaux entered the courtroom with his wife, Jenny, close family, and a few friends. Kay Woodcock was also there to show support to Brandon, and Nancy Jo Hancock was also there in that second row. They quietly took those seats in the first two rows, and across the room, Lori Vallow Daybell sat at the defense table. She was dressed in a navy blue suit, her favorite one I've noticed. Her hair curled and styled as usual. Interestingly, she seemed to be moving better than yesterday, less slouched, less hobbly, more alert. She actually stood this time. Maybe that mystery illness she's been hinting at is starting to fade, or maybe it was never all that real to begin with. Juror number
She
10,
wasn't sick.
however, juror number 10, however, was not so lucky. An elderly veteran, he had seemed willing to serve, but had to be released due to illness. He reportedly experienced cold sweats on the drive home, something he thought was behind him. I personally can't help but wonder if it was PTSD. Whatever it was, I hope he finds relief now that he has been excused. 3 alternate jurors remain. And then it began. Prosecutor Trina Kay stepped to the podium to deliver the state's opening remarks in what she described chilling. She told the jury that on the morning of October 2nd, 2019, Brandon was driving home when something caught his attention. A Jeep Wrangler parked suspiciously close to his driveway. It had Texas plates, tinted windows, no spare tire mounted on the
Mm?
back, something Brandon found odd. He pulled in, and the Jeep's back window started to open, and that's when he saw it, the barrel of a rifle, emerging slowly, aimed directly at him, at Brandon. Let's listen to what prosecutor Trina Kay says happened next.
Sometime today.
Stand by. We are looking for that soundbite.
Point at him. And then bang! Heard a shot and his window shattered right next to him. Brandon hit the accelerator and he took off. He turned the corner and drove a block or so away and stopped, calling 911. He talked to the operator and told them where this Jeep was going. As Brandon was speaking with the 911 operator, he had no idea that that bullet had struck his car just a few inches from his head.
Dang.
You'll learn that in the back of that Jeep was this defendant's brother, Alex Cox. He had been lying in wait with a rifle for Brandon to return home. This defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, the woman seated over here, had loaned her Jeep to her brother so he could drive it to Arizona. So he could be in the back of that Jeep with a very dark tint that no one could see through and wait for Brandon to return home. The goal of this defendant and her co-conspirators, to shoot and kill Brandon Boudreaux. So let's talk about October 2nd and the weeks leading up to that. All of the actions that this defendant did in furtherance of that conspiracy and the premeditated murder of Brandon Boudreaux.
Next, prosecutor Trina Kay began to lay out the broader picture, context, key players, and motive. She told the jury that back in 2019 in June, Brandon was still married to Lori's niece, Melanie. The two were separating, and things were already tense. But behind the scenes, something darker was taking shape. According to Trina, Melanie and Lori were incredibly close, like mother and daughter. And together, they had turned on Brandon. On June 25th, after an argument with Melanie, Brandon learned something upsetting to him, that Lori had allegedly told his wife Melanie that he was gay and that he had hacked her computer and that he was conspiring with Charles Vallow, Lori's then husband, to get her temple recommend revoked. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with the faith, Lori and Brandon shared the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A temple recommend is sacred. Having it revoked is not only embarrassing, but spiritually hurtful. Brandon texted Lori that day to confront her. She never responded. And by July, Brandon and Melanie were headed for divorce. Mediation had started. Around the same time, Lori and Alex were still living in Arizona. And on July 11th, something major happened at Lori's home. An incident that led police to photograph the vehicles parked there, including a 2018 Jeep Wrangler with Texas plates and Alex's Ford F-150. That incident, by the way, was the murder of Charles Vallow, but the jury might not ever hear that part. Too prejudicial, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see. Trina continued. Between August and September of 2019, Lori and Alex moved to Rexburg, Idaho, just miles from Lori's soon-to-be new husband, Chad Daybell. Lori brought two cars with her, the Jeep Wrangler and her Nissan Rogue. Alex brought his truck. Meanwhile, back in Arizona, Melanie and Brandon were finalizing their split. They listed the marital home for sale. Brandon stayed there temporarily while Melanie moved into a rental. Brandon eventually signed a lease for a new place in Gilbert on September 13th. His move-in plan was flexible until Melanie told him that she would be out of town and offered that he'd take the kids for an extra weekend. Her destination, Rexburg, Idaho. She was visiting her Aunt Lori. Before leaving, Melanie asked Brandon for his new address, and because they share kids, Brandon gave it to her, 3875 East Phelps Street. She was the only person he gave that address to, and this they emphasized during the trial. Melanie Boudreaux Pulaski, the only person that Brandon gave that new address to. And this, Trina told the jury, is where the conspiracy takes form. On September 25th, Alex Cox searched online for places to install ultra dark tinting on the Jeep Wrangler. So dark you couldn't see inside. That same day, he paid roughly $200 for the darkest legal tint possible. And Lori let him do it on her Jeep. That, Trina argued, was Lori's first act of conspiracy. The Jeep would be used in the attack. The dark tint would hide Alex, rifle in hand, lying in wait. And that same day, Alex and Lori also went to Walmart in nearby Idaho Falls with cash, and they bought a burner phone, presumably to communicate while avoiding surveillance on Alex's primary device. But here came their second mistake. Alex used the burner to access his Gmail account, and thanks to the search warrant, investigators later found damning evidence. Alex had searched for window tinting, places to practice shooting, gunshot angles and trajectories, Brandon's new address, and back road directions to flee the scene. Meanwhile, on September 30th, Lori herself searched, quote, how to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler, end quote, and clicked on a DIY YouTube video showing exactly how to do it. That seat removal, Trina argued, made it easier for Alex to lie flat in the back of the Jeep, sniper style. This was Lori's second act of conspiracy, another premeditated move. And then came the alibi. An FBI agent named Nick Valance, a cellular data analysis, testified that on September 30th at 4:30 p.m., Alex's real phone moved from his apartment to Lori's for the next several days. It didn't move again. But the burner phone, oh, well, that traveled all the way to Arizona. And then on the morning of the shooting, October 2nd at 8 a.m., Lori used Alex's real phone to call her own number. The goal? To create the illusion that Alex was still in Rexburg. This, Trina claimed, was Lori's third act of conspiracy. 3 deliberate moves: the Jeep, the seat removal, the alibi. Each one exposing a deeper layer of intent, a pattern of premeditation, and, as the prosecutor made clear, each one a mistake. But the digital breadcrumbs didn't end there. Prosecutor Trina Kay revealed that a license plate reader captured Lori's Jeep Wrangler in Arizona on October 1st, 2019. That was just one day before the attempted murder. Later, police recovered the Jeep back in Rexburg, Idaho, and executed a search warrant. Inside the vehicle, they found something damning: a receipt dated October 1st from a restaurant in Mesa, Arizona. And that wasn't all. The Walmart burner phone, the one purchased in cash, was also tracked to Arizona. Gotta love that they used cash to buy a burner phone, but they keep the receipt so investigators can find it. God bless this.
Idiots.
And like that
Idiots.
before,
Idiots.
Alex made a critical error. He used it to sign again into his own Google account and search for Brandon's address. Meanwhile, Lori was busy laying more groundwork. Back in Rexburg, she visited a local storage facility and rented a new unit. Nothing suspicious yet. But what happened the next day raised even more red flags. On the morning of October 2nd, just as Brandon Boudreaux was being ambushed by gunfire in Arizona, Lori returned to that same storage unit, this time with Chad Daybell at her side, her lover at her side. Security footage showed the two of them unloading items from the Jeep and storing them inside the unit. And among the items, the rear tire and the rear bench seat from the Jeep Wrangler. Chad Daybell rolled that rear tire right back into the storage unit. The very ones that Alex would have removed to create space for his ambush position. This, Trina Kay said, was Lori's fourth mistake. Another calculated move to hide evidence, another sign of premeditation, another step in a chilling conspiracy. Lori wasn't just aware of the attempted murder, Trina argued, she enabled it. She facilitated it. And she tried to cover it up. And each mistake left a trail straight back to her. That morning, Alex Cox once again Googled Brandon Boudreaux's address. His burner phone pinged off cell towers near Melanie's home, Brandon's soon-to-be ex-wife, Lori's niece. And now this is important. Melanie knew Brandon had their 4 children. The The plan was for him to drop three of them off at school and then meet her at a local park to exchange the youngest. But what Melanie didn't know and what Alex couldn't have anticipated was that after school drop off, Brandon planned to hit the gym before returning home. So Alex waited and waited. The Jeep, parked suspiciously near Brandon's house, sat there long enough to catch the attention of a neighbor who found it strange. And eventually, Brandon pulled into his driveway, and that's when it happened. The Jeep's back window opened easily because the spare tire again had been removed. A rifle emerged, and a shot was fired. The bullet missed Brandon by inches, striking the frame of his Tesla just above the driver's side window, barely over his head. Brandon, somehow still alive, sped off immediately. He circled the block and returned moments later just as the garage door opened and the window shattered completely from the force of the bullet. He was already on the phone with 911 telling dispatch what had just happened. And while Brandon was describing the ambush, Alex Cox was Googling back road directions to flee Arizona and return to Rexburg. He made it back to Idaho the next
They
day
ain't nothing
after
but
murder. And Lori,
premeditated.
she didn't miss a beat. That same day, Lori and Alex were seen returning to the storage unit, the same one they had stalked before the shooting. There, they retrieved the Jeep's rear tire and back seat, the ones removed to make space for the ambush. They also searched online for news in Gilbert shooting of Brandon, trying to see if police knew it was them. Meanwhile, Brandon spoke to police. And when asked if he had enemies, he could only think of two people. And who were they? Lori and Alex. He mentioned the Jeep with Texas plates, Lori's old residence in Texas, and even referenced the Chandler shooting involving Lori's former husband, Charles Vallow. That clue would prove valuable. Investigators reached out to police in Rexburg, Idaho, where Lori and Alex had relocated. And on November 1st, officers went to the apartment complex where Lori, Alex, and Chad were living. Chad Daybell was present, but the Jeep, it was nowhere to be found. And when police returned on November 4th, the Jeep had reappeared, parked right outside Lori's residence. The tire and bench seat were back in place as if nothing had happened. The vehicle was immediately impounded. 2 weeks later, on November 18th, Arizona investigators, they flew to Idaho to process the Jeep. What they found was damning. Inside, they recovered gunshot residue from the rear compartment, evidence consistent with a gun being fired through the back window. They also swabbed for DNA on the steering wheel and the seatbelt buckle. The result? Well, a match to Alex Cox. Pretty damning. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Lori and Alex conspired. They planned, and Alex pulled the trigger, but he missed. And Brandon Boudreaux lived to tell the tale. Next, prosecutor Trina Kay told the jury they'll soon see it for themselves. Maps, data, digital footprints, movements of Lori's phone, movements of Alex's, and crucial movements of the burner phone. All of it tracked, all of it aligning with the timeline of the crime. And here's the final twist. After the shooting, that burner phone, it was never used again. In fact, it was only ever linked to one other number. Not Alex, not Lori, but Chad Daybell, Lori's lover and soon-to-be fifth husband. As Trina closed her opening remarks,
Y'all heard it right. Fifth husband.
Chilling message. Every move Lori made, every lie she told, every detail she tried to erase, she left a digital trail. And when you follow it, it doesn't lead to innocence. It leads straight to conspiracy. Take a listen.
This defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, has been charged with conspiracy to commit the first-degree murder of Brandon Boudreaux on October 2nd of 2019. The evidence in this case will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant conspired with Alex Cox and others to kill Brandon. She provided the means, the Jeep, she helped get the Jeep ready, and she tried to provide an alibi for her co-conspirator. At the end of this trial, the state will ask you all to hold this defendant accountable and find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Thank you.
Well, as far as Lori Vallow Daybell's opening statement, we're just going to go ahead and play the whole thing for you. It's definitely not as lengthy as Trina
Might
Kay's.
as well
Trina,
play the whole
you've seen,
thing.
is always ultra thorough, meticulous, detailed, methodical. Lori, not so much. In fact, I would not use any of those adjectives to explain Lori Vallow Daybell. But honestly, that's part of what makes it so fascinating. It's always something watching Lori fumble her way through legal arguments she clearly doesn't fully grasp, trying to sound composed and in control while the weight of murder charges looms over her. So without further ado, here is Lori Vallow Daybell's opening statements in her own words addressing the jury in her third and final trial. Take a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here we are at trial. And the judicial system can be difficult to understand.
And that voice is Lori Vallow Daybell herself.
Statutes that govern how things will proceed in this trial. You yesterday got to hear the preliminary jury instructions, so you kind of got an order of how things are going to go. In order for someone to be charged with a crime, as I have been,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to argument versus an opening statement.
How did she just object to herself?
Preview of what is to be expected.
This is weird.
Go ahead.
that law enforcement presents evidence that they gather, and the state prosecutors are going to present that to you.
Lori Vallow Daybell, the fool
Sometimes
for
the
a
state charges
crime.
the defendant with a crime. They have charged me with a crime, a very serious crime. Sometimes they take the allegations to a grand jury to decide if the
I'm
defendant
going
should
to
be
object
charged.
again, Your Honor. Improper
That's,
argument. That's a strike.
Hold on. The jury should disregard that last comment. How the charges arrived here are not for the jury's consideration. The prior proceedings are not for the jury's consideration. Please proceed.
The state or the prosecution will then take the information gathered, the evidence from law enforcement, and present to you a story, a theory, their hypothesis of what happened. In this case, the prosecutor was not present during this alleged crime. The Gilbert Police Department was not present during this alleged crime. So it is their job to fill in the gaps, make up a theory, and present it to you, the jury, at trial. This is their job. They are not witness to the actual events because they weren't there that day with Brandon at the house when this alleged shooting occurred. This case is about a conspiracy. And a conspiracy is when two or more people make an agreement to commit a crime. They have to willingly and knowingly participate. Conspiracy is an
People
ancient
don't
word
know
that
that,
appears in the
Lori.
Bible on many occasions.
Oh,
Judas conspired
God,
against
she gets
Jesus with the chief
tired.
priest for 30 pieces of silver.
Object to unless this is being presented at trial, I'm not sure that this is appropriate opening.
What is the legal objection?
Well, you're arguing. The opening statement is not argument. I'm going to allow it briefly, but I may cut you off depending on where you're going with that.
King conspired against Daybell, his brother. This case is a case of conspiracy. The charge against me is that I conspired with my brother, Alex Cox, to murder my niece's husband, Brandon Boudreaux. But you will find,
Which you did,
as we get
Lori.
to see the evidence put forth in this case, that there was not any animosity between Brandon and myself. I personally did not have any motivation to have harm come to Brandon. In fact, Brandon and I had a very friendly relationship all of the time that I have known him. I first
I
met
don't know
Brandon when
about
he was
that.
marrying my niece Melanie.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to, unless the defendant's testifying.
Can I have the parties approach briefly? Can I have you approach briefly?
Pitiful. Pitiful, Lori. Pitiful. This is pitiful from Lori.
Go ahead.
I first met Brandon when he was marrying my niece Melanie. Melanie and I are very close because my sister, her mother, passed away when she was just 9 years old. So Melanie and I think of each other each other like a mother and daughter, even though we are aunt and niece. So our families remained close, Melanie and Brandon's family and my family, in each other's lives, like everyday lives. We spent holidays together and shared in everyday life. I was there for Melanie and Brandon's wedding and for the birth of all four of their children. I was
What'd
also
you
very
do,
close to
Lori?
all four of their children. In this case, you will hear Brandon himself tell you that someone shot a gun at his car. You will learn in this testimony that Brandon was not hurt. You will learn that he wasn't even sure what had happened. But you will hear that Brandon immediately blamed me. Which begs the question, was I an enemy to Brandon? That is news to me, and hopefully by the end of this trial, we will all have some answers to that question. In this case, you will learn that Brandon had called 911, and Gilbert Police did respond. You will learn that Brandon speaks of a puke green Jeep, and then he offers the officers a camo green color that he's speaking of on his phone. He says a green Jeep. Then you will hear the neighbor who says that it was a dark blue Jeep that was parked in front of the neighbor's house. You will learn that Brandon very quickly hired a private investigator to find out where I was living out of the state of Arizona so he could inform the police. You will see Brandon exchange email information with Detective Pillar, the case agent in this case, about my whereabouts and about the financial dealings of my niece, Melanie Boudreau. You will learn that Brandon was not particularly satisfied with the investigation that Gilbert Police was conducting, so he did his own investigation, hiring his own private investigator to follow his wife, Melanie Boudreau. You will find out that Brandon had access to the VIN number of a Jeep and gave it to the police. You will find out that after that event, he quickly changed his story from a camo green Jeep to a gray Jeep. You will then learn that Brandon continued to provide information he was personally finding out to Detective Pillar, the case agent in this case. You will learn that Detective Pillar and Brandon discussed through email how they can demonstrate Melanie's financial gain if Brandon were to have died around October 2nd, 2019. This is what a conspiracy looks like. Two people trying to set up another person for a crime. My niece, Melanie Boudreau, is named by the state as a co-conspirator. However, she has not been charged with the crime.
I'm going to object
But
to
I
that
have.
struck as well, Your Honor.
Jury should disregard that statement. You're going to receive an instruction later that all persons that may be involved would not necessarily be charged or called as witnesses, and you'll follow those instructions later. Go ahead.
I was not living in Arizona at the time this alleged incident happened on October 2nd, 2019. I was not even aware such an event had taken place. I did have a close relationship with my brother Alex, but I was not aware of his every move. Melanie also had a close relationship with Alex,
Lies.
but also was not aware of his
Lies.
location at all times. Brandon and Alex also had a good relationship until this accusation. They saw each other frequently at all of our family parties and get-togethers and would often be seen laughing and talking. Alex was a comedian who kept our family laughing. Alex passed away in December 2019 of natural causes, so he is not here to defend himself.
And I'm going to object again to that as well, since he's not party to this. He's
All
not
right,
here.
I'll just remind the jury that what is said in opening statements is not evidence, it's not sworn testimony. Please proceed.
Although the state has alleged that there are several co-conspirators in this case, I am the only one being charged with the crime. So you will be the judge. You will hear and see evidence presented by the state. The state has, according to the law, 100% burden to prove to you
I
that
object to a statement of the law in terms of 100%.
All right, again, this is a little bit bordering on argument, but the jury will receive the instructions on what is and what is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
state has the burden to prove that a crime has been committed here and that I committed that crime. That is the way the law is written. I do not have to show any evidence or put up a defense. I do not have to testify. That is the law. The prosecutors from the state have to prove to you that I conspired, meaning made an agreement with my brother to murder Brandon. So you will decide. Right now, according to the law, I am innocent. I remain innocent until the state of Arizona and its prosecutors show you enough evidence to convince you that I had anything to do with this alleged crime. And I want you to look carefully and determine if this event was a crime at all. Did a shooting actually occur? Only Brandon claims that it did. Only Brandon names me and Alex. You will learn that Brandon himself did own a gun. You will learn that Brandon knew how to shoot his gun. You will learn that Brandon and Melanie were going through a divorce. And you will learn that even though Brandon is the one who actually filed for a divorce, he was blaming me for his divorce. You will learn that the information that the Gilbert Police Department and Detective Pillar, the case agent on this case, learned about me and my brother Alex was from Brandon Boudreaux. You will learn that Brandon and Detective Pillar communicated frequently and were on a first-name basis. I want you to look closely at the motivation of Brandon and the Gilbert Police Department, because I'm the only one charged with the crime, and I need you to decipher what
Blah
really
blah
happened
blah,
here,
Lori.
because I'm the only one who's being asked to pay a
With the
consequence
way
for
that
this
Lori
crime.
is
I'm going
annoying
to
me,
ask to object and strike that.
I may not finish this
Sustained.
whole
The jury, in their
day
instructions,
one.
received an instruction that said the jury is not to consider a penalty. That will be in the final instructions area as well. The jury's job is to determine whether or not the state has proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt or the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Go ahead, proceed.
You will hear many references during this trial about the state versus Lori Daybell. Well, who is the state? The state are the prosecutors.
I object to argument and relevance.
Sustained.
This is beginning to
And you,
annoy
the
me.
jury, are brought in to stand between the state and me.
I'm going to object again to improper statement of the law, argument, and relevance.
Sustained.
You
This
are here to
prosecutor
say if
is
a crime
about
has
to
even been
cook,
committed
Lori.
at all. You are here to say if I committed this very crime and if the state proved this to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If at the end of this trial you have reasonable doubt, then I remain innocent. If the state does not prove to you that I, 1, committed a crime, and 2, committed this crime, then I remain innocent. In this case, you will hear a lot of speculation. The definition of speculation is an idea or guess
Good
about
God,
something that is
Lori,
not
this is
known.
put me to sleep.
During this trial, the state will try to convince you that I committed this crime by using speculation, innuendo, and insinuation.
Yeah,
And the
whatever.
state is hoping that this will be enough. In this trial, you will in fact witness a power struggle between the state and the defendant.
Your Honor,
For
I
what
would
a fact
object to
really
argument.
is.
Sustained.
Because they want to convince you, the jury, that a fact is speculation, that a fact is innuendo, that a fact is insinuation, that they knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was planning, when they don't know it all. You, the jury, have all the power to decide what the facts are and what they're not. Not the state, not the judge, not law enforcement. You. So I implore you to listen carefully and decide for yourselves if the state's theory really makes logical sense. What motivation did I have? What malice have I ever shown to anyone? What benefit would I gain? I am a person who loves all people and has no malice towards anyone, not even the prosecutors who wrongfully try to convict me.
Your Honor, I object again to relevance and to argument.
Sustained.
I am all about spreading love and will continue to do so, even after this trial is complete, no matter the result. Thank you.
Well, that was something. I don't even know what to say. If you know Lori Vallow's history, like we do, then prosecutor Trina Kay's objections during opening statements made perfect sense. Lori's manipulations span years and bodies.
Years
But
on
here's the
top of
problem.
years.
This jury doesn't know that. They don't know Trina's background. They don't know Lori's track record of lies, legal games, and lives destroyed.
Talk
Then
about
it
it.
may have looked like the state was coming down hard on an unpolished, self-represented woman just trying to defend herself. They don't realize she's represented herself before and should know courtroom protocol by now. So when Trina objected again
Talk
and
about
again,
it.
it may have landed as abrasive for a jury with no context. But for those of us who do know Lori, it was laughable when she told the jury that she's never shown malice and just wants to spread love. Love? All Lori Vallow has ever spread is death and destruction. And one day, this jury will see that too, hopefully, even without the context they're missing right now. Now, let's talk about the first witness called to the stand. It was actually Brandon Boudreaux himself. Brandon introduced himself as 40 years old, living in Arizona, and the owner of a solar company. He married Melanie, Lori's niece, in October 2008. They were married for a decade and had 4 children. Divorce proceedings began in July 2019, and they were finalized by October. And during their marriage, Brandon and Melanie were close to the Vallow family. They spent a lot of time with Lori and Charles and saw Alex Cox often as well. But it was Lori who had the most influence, especially over Melanie. After Melanie's mother passed away, which was when Melanie was quite young, she began to see Lori as not just an aunt, but as a mother figure. And it was around 2018 into 2019 that Brandon says the problems began. Melanie was suddenly spending more time with Lori. Brandon noticed a shift. He spoke to Charles Vallows about it, worried that Lori was actively interfering in his marriage. And then came June 25th, 2019, a day Brandon will never forget. It started with Melanie refusing to attend his grandfather's funeral, but it escalated fast into accusations that Brandon was hacking Lori's computer and that Brandon was gay. Melanie told him she wanted a divorce. She threatened to expose him. Brandon believed every word of it came from Lori's mouth, planted into Melanie's mind. Let's listen now as Brandon describes that unraveling moment in his own words.
As you were listening to the things that Melanie was telling you that evening or afternoon into the evening of June 25th, did you believe that Lori Vallow had been involved in some of these ideas that were being told to you as to why your marriage should end?
Yeah, I mean, how else does her aunt's computer getting hacked even come up without Lori being involved? So, I got pretty frustrated at one point, and I think I told her I'm going to take a break, and I texted Lori and Charles and tried to call both of them to discuss it with them because I wanted them to understand the gravity. You know, this is my family. This is my kids. This changes the rest of their lives. You know, it's not just whatever was going on for those two.
So you told us that you just mentioned that you actually sent a text message or a couple of text messages to Lori Vallow that evening?
Yes, I did.
Can you scoot just a little closer? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Why did you text Lori Vallow that night?
Hope that she would have integrity, that she would respond and acknowledge that I didn't hack her computer. I don't know, honestly, just hope, you know. I was trying to find something to fix the problem.
So you felt strongly enough that Lori Vallow was involved in these ideas that Melanie was putting at you that you actually reached out to her.
Yes.
Your Honor, show the defendant Exhibit 122. I could have my paralegal bring that up.
Nigga's killing
I want you to look at Exhibit 122. Do you recognize those text messages?
Yes, I do.
Are those messages that you sent to Lori Vallow on June 25th of 2019?
Yes, they are.
Do those relate to the allegations that were being told to you by Melanie that Lori had provided her?
Yes, they do.
And that was you trying to fix these things that were lies?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 122.
Any objection?
No objection.
122 is admitted.
If I may publish. Okay. Brandon, just so we understand, when you were shot at on October 2nd of 2019, did you actually provide the police with your cell phone
I did, yes.
so they could download everything?
Yes.
And this is from your cell phone?
Yes.
So we see on June 25th of 2019 at 6:45 p.m. The first message that you sent? And was this phone number the 808 number, Lori Vallow's phone number?
Come on, hurry up, Lori.
In the message, what did
I'm
you
not.
tell
I'm not
Lori?
about to do all this. Ain't
I
no
told her
damn way.
that Melanie believed I helped to try to get her temper recommend taken away, and that we both knew that it wasn't true. Do you want me to just read it?
Sure.
Lori, I sent this to Charles. I'm sending it to you as well. Charles, Melanie believes I helped you to try to get Lori's temple recommend taken away. You and I both know that's not true. She does not believe me. I wanted to send this to both you and Lori. If either of you care at all for me or my children, you'll come forward and be truthful. I've never done anything to hurt either of you. I can't believe you would lie to her about something like this. I gave you a blessing when you're worst in my home. My children will be punished. If my wife leaves me or can't believe me when I have done nothing, this is on your heads to make it right.
After this, Brandon actually discussed working with the mediator who helped guide the couple, Brandon and Melanie, through their divorce. They agreed to have joint
Okay,
custody
good
of the
night.
children and
I'm
to sell their
falling down
marital
asleep.
home.
Good night.
Brandon continued living in that marital home until it sold, while Melanie moved into a rental in